I've been to Amityville, Long Island countless times. It's a really nice little town, and it's situated on the Amityville River, so there's boating and fishing, all kinds of outdoor activities. It's a beautiful little town, but it holds a horrible, horrible history. And being only about 3 or so hours away from there, when I was growing up, I had to go visit after the movie and all the controversy. Is it the most haunted house in America, maybe even the world? Well, arguably, with the controversy that surrounded it, it may be. There's two very distinct pieces to this story. One, of course, are the murders. The murders did indeed occur. That is not conjecture. That is fact. And then, of course, there's the paranormal side of it, when George and Kathy Lutz fled the house after only being there for 28 days with just the clothes on their backs, and then subsequently wrote a book that became a movie.
What happened to them is an experience in terror you will never forget, and you will believe in the Amityville Horror.
And then there was all kinds of sequels, and it goes on and on. This is the second of a series of the scariest places in America, and this will be the first of a two-part series about specifically Amityville. Let's try to unravel some of this. I'm going to do part one right now. Part one is going to be about the murders. Hi, I'm Rikki Rockett, and I am the drummer for Poison, but on my spare time I like to make videos about urban legends, and I do what is called legend tripping. If you're new to this channel, make sure and subscribe. Click the like button if you like the video, and make sure to turn on your notifications so that you're notified when I do part two and all the rest of the videos I do. November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. walked through the house in Amityville, Long Island, known as the Amityville Horror House today, and shot his entire family. He shot his dad twice, his mother twice, he shot his brothers and his sisters. 13 months later, George and Kathy Lutz moved into that house, and in 28 days after they moved in, they fled with just the clothes on their back.
They were running for their lives.
Said they were haunted out of that house and that they could never go back.
What do you want from us?
They didn't care about any of their earthly belongings. They hired a writer named Jay Anson. He co-wrote a book. The book was a runaway smash, turned into a movie. The movie was a runaway smash. There were sequels. There was controversy. Paranormal investigators. The police were challenged about the murders. All sorts of things happened. This has become one of the most notorious, famous, haunted houses in the United States of America, and possibly the world. The layers of information surrounding the murders sometimes it's hard to tell fact from fiction when you get on the internet and read. So let's start with what we know to be fact. On November 13th, 1974, the police were notified that there was a homicide at 112 Ocean Avenue, and they discovered 6 members of the DeFeo family dead. The father, the mother, the 5 children. They were shot and killed execution style. Their surviving son, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr., who was only 23 years old at the time, was eventually charged and tried for the murder of his family. He is currently serving 6 life sentences for those murders. The murders, as it turns out, have become way more fascinating than the haunting part, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. But the thing that becomes a little bit controversial is how somebody walks through a house which appears to be large when you look at it from the photos, but it's really not that big of a house. I don't know the exact square footage, but when you walk through there with essentially a deer rifle, it was a .35 caliber. It's very close to a .30-30, and I've fired a .30-30 Marlin many times. It is called the Deer Slayer. That's what that gun is called. It's a loud gun. You can hear it ricochet. And he walked through there and shot 6 members of his family, and nobody moved. Nobody got out of bed. Nobody ran. Nobody rolled off the bed and rolled under the bed. Nobody did any of that stuff. And that's the puzzling part about it. And that's one of the things that seems to just keep always creeping up. Even the police said, well, maybe there was another assailant. Maybe somebody else helped Ron DeFeo carry out these murders. So at 6:30 in the morning on November 13th, 1974, Ron DeFeo entered this place called Henry's Bar, 6:30 in the morning, and started screaming that his mother and father had been shot. And he got a few people to come with him. They went to the house.
He came, he opened the door, and he was screaming, "Come on, help me. Somebody shot my mother and father." And everyone ran out of the bar, and that was it. They all took off. No, I had to stay. I was tending bar. They all jumped in his car and took off.
One guy crawled through the window, saw the first two bodies, and said, "That's it, I'm calling the police." So the police responded, of course, and Ronald DeFeo defended himself immediately, saying that he thought that it could have been a mob hit.
Ronald is being safeguarded by the Suffolk County Police at this time.
Why safeguarded?
Why? Because there's 6 members of the family dead, and we don't know why, and he's the sole remaining member.
Is he also a suspect?
He's not a suspect at this time.
And he said that his dad was involved with this kind of stuff. The next day, however, he confessed to the murders. And when they asked him about some of these particulars about the murder, he kept changing his story. To this day, 30-some years later, almost 40 years later, he still continues to change his story.
Next thing I know, I hear a shot, but I didn't fire it. He's getting up. He's starting to get up now, my father. I put a second round in him. It was mass confusion. My sister shoots my mother.
The question remains, was there another assailant? It is possible that Louise was shot with a different caliber gun the second time. Now, there's a lot of controversy surrounding that, and the police don't really go for that hypothesis. They just think that Ronnie reloaded, because they did find the gun with 2 more rounds in the chamber. So if there was a second shooter, or if there wasn't a second shooter, was there a second gun? And what is believed, and one possible theory that was brought up, is that there was a .38 used, and that .38 was discharged into Louise, the mother, a second time as the second shot, because all the lead from the bullets were weighed, and one piece of lead weighed more in her, and that would have been the .38 slug, most likely, if there was. There was a holster recovered along with the rifle, but there was no gun in it. Ryan, in his film Shattered Hopes, actually combed the Amityville River and found the remains of a .38, and it is believed that Ronnie did throw that gun into the Amityville River after the murders occurred. So probably the reason why the police didn't go after that is because it would have just complicated the case more. My friend Ryan Katzenbach did a trilogy called Shattered Hopes, which is a movie, essentially a documentary about the murders. And he got a lot of his information from a guy named Rick Osana that wrote a book called The Night That the Feos Died. And they both did a tremendous amount of research into this to try to figure out all these little nuances, because there was, on the roll of film from the police, there was another body, which turned out to have happened at another place, and the police went to that scene of that crime, took a photo, and came back to the scene of the Lutzes and finished photographing it. Weird, I know, but that's what happened. That murder was actually, a guy was tried and convicted, and that guy died in prison a few years back. You know, the physical evidence suggests that Louise DeFeo, that's the mother, and her daughter Allison were both awake at the time of their deaths. And this piece of information is a little bit important because paranormal investigators have really latched onto that and said, oh, okay, well, if we were going to talk to any of the dead, it would be them, because they'd know exactly what happened. The forensics were a little bit different then. They weren't quite as concise as they are today. There was a little piece of information that Ryan gave me, and that was that about 11 days before the murders occurred, Ronnie Jr. took a bank bag. His dad owned a car dealership, and he took that bag, I think he was in Brooklyn, to take it to the bank. That was his job. And supposedly he claimed that he got robbed. What most people think, and what the idea is that he most likely stole that money and then claimed that somebody robbed them. He also knew that he was going to get arrested for falsifying that charge, and his dad was going to have his ass for it. That could be a possible motive for that murder. But the fact of the matter is that it's a sad story. These are human beings that were taken out of their life way early. I know that there was a lot of controversy surrounding Ronald and his dad, and that the father was abusive, and that Ronnie grew up. He never won the approval of his dad. His dad would hug him one second and throw him across the room the next. There was all these allegations, so we don't know what kind of a guy he was. Just from what I've heard, he was not the nicest guy, and the mother was kind of a doting mother that didn't really do anything about the abuse. These are the stories that I've heard. I don't know if it's true. And I've heard stories of incest with the one daughter. I don't know if that's true. All this stuff is alleged. And Ron DeFeo has talked about these murders, and he's talked about his family, and he's talked about a woman that he married. And this woman, turns out that she married him after he was in prison. It was like in the 80s, the early 80s, she got married to him. But she was trying to convince everybody that she was married to him when he committed the murders, and tried to create some sort of defense for him. I want you to know that that has never been proven in any way, shape, or form to have any merit. Ronnie was also a two-bit criminal. He had been on probation for stealing boat motors, which was a big thing there because of the boating. You know, he was not such a...
And they believe I'm the devil incarnate. And I'm not. I'm something totally a million miles from that.
One of the most frustrating things about this whole case is that here you have the murderer who is still alive today. And if you interview him, he will tell you a different story every time. He cannot be trusted. So to find out this information is very frustrating. One thing that I would love to do is actually walk through the Amityville house in some safe way and discharge that 35 Marlin 7 times and have sound meters and really find out how long it would have taken to walk through there and how much sound would have been discharged. That would be interesting to know. Outside of that, it seems to me that Ronald DeFeo Jr. did act alone from what all the evidence shows, but there may have been a second gun. Next video, we're going to cover the paranormal aspect of this case because it is a many splendored thing. Take care of each other and keep rock alive.